What if I told you that the most expensive, most trusted ingredient in your winter ground bait is the very thing scaring the fish away? It sounds crazy, right? Today, we are talking about bloodworms. Specifically, we're going to tear down the belief that mixing them into your ground bait is the key to success. In fact, it might be the worst decision you make on the ice. Stick with me, because I am going to show you the logic and the on-the-ice evidence that will change how you approach winter fishing forever. This could be the exact reason why the guy 50 feet away is pulling up fish after fish while you're getting nothing but a cold. So let me ask you, do you swear by loading your ground bait with bloodworms? Let me know in the comments right now, because I have a strong feeling you might change your mind by the end of this video. For generations, the rule for winter fishing has been drilled into our heads: the water is cold, the fish are slow, so you need a super attractive, high-protein bait to wake them up and get them feeding. And what's at the top of that list? Always bloodworms. It's become the go-to strategy. You buy a bag of your favorite ground bait, a generous portion of live or frozen bloodworms, mix it all into a rich, potent cloud, and you expect the fish to swarm your spot. We have all done it. We've been taught that more is better. It's what we see the old-timers do. It's what we read in magazines. It just feels right to give the fish a generous offering in the harsh conditions. But here's the problem. In the dead of winter, the rules of biology and fish behavior are completely different. And that generous offering is often the kiss of death for your fishing session. First, let's talk about the biggest misunderstanding of fish's metabolism in winter. When the water temperature drops, fish like bream, roach, and perch enter a state of near hibernation. Their body processes slow down dramatically. Digestion, which might take hours in the summer, can take days in the winter. They are not actively hunting for a massive feast. They are conserving energy, looking for a tiny, easy, safe meal to just get by. Imagine you just woke up from a long, deep sleep. You don't want a 5-course meal. You might want a small snack or a glass of water. By throwing in a huge ball of ground bait packed with bloodworms, you are offering a giant all-you-can-eat buffet to someone who only has the appetite for a single potato chip. It's a fundamental mismatch between what we offer and what the fish actually needs. This leads directly to the next major problem. You're feeding the fish, not catching them. This is what I call the satiation trap. Picture this from the fish's perspective. A school of hungry perch or roach is drawn to the scent of your ground bait. The bait ball breaks up on the bottom, releasing hundreds of free, easy-to-eat bloodworms. The fish dart in, pick off 3, 4, maybe 5 worms from the cloud of particles, and that's it. Their tiny winter appetite is completely satisfied. They are full. They now have zero incentive to look for your hook bait, which is just one more worm among the hundreds they just ate. You have successfully called them in and fed them a full meal, and now they will likely sit there, lethargic and uninterested, until they digest. You did all the work for nothing. Now let's think about simple probability. You've created massive competition for your own hook. Let's use an analogy. Imagine you're in an empty room and you drop a single red jelly bean on the floor. Anyone who walks in will spot that jelly bean instantly. Now imagine you cover that same floor with 10,000 white jelly beans and then drop your one red jelly bean among them. The odds of it being found plummet. This is precisely what you do when you load your ground bait with bloodworms. Your hook bait with 1 or 2 perfect worms is that single red jelly bean, but you've just scattered hundreds of freebies all around it. A fish can peck around in your bait cloud all day, get its fill, and never once encounter your hook. You are actively working against yourself. There's also the deception of active ground bait. We are taught that a ground bait that fizzes, bubbles, and creates a big active cloud is great because it draws fish in. In the summer, that can be true. But in the dead of winter, under the ice, the environment is typically very still and quiet. A sudden, massive explosion of scent, particles, and food can be highly unnatural. For a large, cautious old fish, the very bream or roach you are targeting, this sudden commotion can be alarming. Instead of interpreting it as a dinner bell, they might see it as a sign of danger, like a predator stirring up the bottom. So while you think you're attracting them, you might actually be pushing the biggest, smartest fish away from your spot before they even get a chance to see your bait. And who does that commotion attract? That's right, these smallest, most aggressive fish in the area. Your big cloud of bloodworm-laced ground bait is an absolute magnet for tiny perch, fingerling roach, and other nuisance fish. They have no fear and are always looking for an easy meal. They will swarm your spot, creating a frenzy of activity. You might even catch a dozen of these tiny fish in the first 10 minutes and think, wow, this is working great. But this initial flurry of activity is a false positive. It's a clear sign that you've created a soup kitchen for the runts of the lake, and it comes at a huge cost. The presence of that feeding frenzy of small fish is often a major deterrent for the trophy fish you're actually after. A big, cautious bream that's been around for years didn't get that big by being careless. It will often hang back on the edge of the activity, observing. When it sees dozens of tiny fish darting around erratically, it reads that situation as either too much competition for a small meal, or worse, a sign that a predator is nearby and has caused a panic. The big fish decides it's not worth the risk or the energy to compete with the little guys, and so it simply fades away into the cold water, leaving you to reel in fish that are smaller than your bait. So if that's the wrong way, what's the right way? The answer is to adopt a clean bottom strategy. This is a complete reversal of the more is better philosophy. The goal here is to use a ground bait that has very little or even zero food value. Think of a dark, fine particle, inert mix. Its only job is to create a subtle scent trail and a dark patch on the bottom that piques the fish's curiosity. It should signal that something might be here, not the party is right here. This minimalist approach is far less likely to spook wary fish, and it sets the stage perfectly for your hook bait to be the star of the show. This is where the power of a single morsel comes into play. On that clean, baited area with no free food, your hook bait becomes the absolute center of attention. When a fish follows that subtle scent trail to your spot, what does it find? Not a confusing buffet of hundreds of worms, but one single, perfectly presented, juicy-looking meal. Your hook bait, with no other options and no competition, the fish is far more likely to commit and take your bait confidently. You have created a scenario where the only logical conclusion for the fish is to eat the one thing you want it to eat. It's elegant, efficient, and deadly effective. Let's paint a clear picture of this in action. Imagine an on-the-ice experiment. You drill 2 holes 20 feet apart. In hole number 1, you use the traditional method. You drop in 3 or 4 big, tightly packed balls of ground bait that are absolutely loaded with live bloodworms. The water clouds up, and you can see particles everywhere. In hole number 2, you use a small feeder to deposit a tiny amount of dark, plain ground bait with no bloodworms mixed in at all. The only bloodworms at this spot are the 2 you've threaded onto your fine wire hook. You set up a rod on each hole and wait. What do you think happens next? Here is what almost always happens. In hole number 1, with the heavy baiting, you get action almost immediately. The float dips and dives. You catch a few small perch, one after another. It feels exciting for the first 20 minutes, but then the bites slow down, and then they stop completely. The small fish have had their fill and moved on, or the commotion has died down. The big fish you were hoping for never showed up. They were likely spooked by the initial chaos, or simply couldn't find your hook in the mess. Your spot is now dead, full of satiated fish and wasted bait. Now let's look at hole number 2, the clean spot. For the first 30 minutes, you might get nothing. It feels slow, and you might be tempted to think you've done something wrong, but then you see a slow, confident lift of the float. You strike, and you feel the heavy thump of a quality fish. A big roach comes up through the ice. A little while later, it happens again, and again. The bites are less frequent than the initial frenzy at the other hole, but every single fish is a good one. Why? Because only the curious, confident fish came to investigate, and when they arrived, the only meal they found was your perfectly presented hook bait. The critical lesson here is that you need to create curiosity, not a soup kitchen. Your ground bait is an advertisement, not the main course. In the summer, when fish are competing aggressively for food, a big spread can work. But in the winter, everything is about subtlety and deception. You want your ground bait to whisper to the fish, "Hey, come over here, there's a tiny, safe, easy meal waiting for you." You don't want it to scream, "Free all-you-can-eat buffet." This single change in mindset is probably the most important strategic adjustment a winter angler can make. It's about finesse, not brute force. So, this begs the question, what is the proper role for the bloodworm in winter fishing? The answer is simple. It belongs on your hook, not in your ground bait. The bloodworm is the prize. It is the ultimate offering that you want the fish to find and eat. By mixing it into the ground bait, you devalue it. You turn the most precious gem in your arsenal into common gravel. Reserve your best bloodworms for the hook, where they can do their job, triggering a bite. If you absolutely must add some to the ground bait for scent, use a tiny pinch of crushed worms, not a handful of live ones. If you want to use a more advanced technique, try what's called the plug method. This gives you the best of both worlds. You take a small cage feeder and pack it with your plain, inert ground bait. Then right at the very end of the feeder, you create a small plug using just a few crushed bloodworms mixed with a tiny bit of ground bait. When this lands on the bottom, it releases a very concentrated, localized pocket of scent right next to your hook. It's like a spotlight shining directly on your bait, without providing a free meal all over the bottom. This is a pro-level tactic that works exceptionally well. This targeted approach is essentially creating a trap. The faint scent from the inert ground bait draws the fish into the general area. As it gets closer, it picks up on that stronger, more concentrated scent from the bloodworm plug. It zeroes in on the source of that smell, and the very first thing it encounters is your hook bait sitting there like a perfect, irresistible jewel. The fish has no reason to be suspicious. It found the source of the amazing smell, and here is the reward. It's a clean, simple, and incredibly effective way to trick even the wariest of old fish. We also have to discuss the difference between dead and live bloodworms in the mix. Many anglers think that using live worms is better because their wiggling adds attraction. In reality, mixing live bloodworms into your bait ball is probably the worst possible version of this mistake. As soon as your bait ball breaks apart, those live worms do what they are programmed to do. They immediately burrow down into the silt, mud, or sediment on the bottom to hide. They effectively vanish from sight, but the fish can still smell them. Now you have a massive problem. You have just trained the fish in your swim to dig in the mud for food. They will spend hours with their heads down, sifting through the bottom, looking for those hidden worms. And where is your hook bait during all of this? It's likely suspended just slightly off the bottom or lying on top. The fish are completely ignoring it. They are busy digging for the meal you buried for them. You've not only failed to attract them to your hook, but you've actively taught them to look for food everywhere except where your hook is. It's a classic self-defeating error. Let's be honest, there is a psychological factor at play for us, the anglers. It feels good to be generous with our bait. It feels proactive. When the fishing is slow, our instinct is to do more, add more bait, make a bigger cloud, sweeten the pot. We feel that by putting in a lot of expensive bloodworms, we are giving ourselves the best possible chance of success. It's hard to break that habit. But in winter fishing, very often the best action you can take is to do less, much, much less. It requires confidence and discipline to trust that a minimalist approach will outperform a generous one. So here is the ultimate test. I challenge you to try this on your next trip out. Don't just take my word for it, prove it to yourself. Drill 2 holes a good distance apart so they don't influence each other. On the first hole, fish exactly how you normally would. Use your favorite ground bait mix. Load it up with bloodworms and fish with confidence. On the second hole, implement the strategy we've discussed today. Use a plain, dark, inert ground bait with 0 bloodworms in it. Use only 2 or 3 bloodworms on your hook. Fish both holes for a few hours and be honest with your results. I'm willing to bet that the quality, if not the quantity, of the fish from the clean hole will make you a believer. In summary, the entire philosophy needs to shift. We have to move away from the brute force, heavy feeding tactics of summer and embrace the subtle, strategic, and often minimalist approach that winter demands. It is a season of finesse. The fish are not the same, the environment is not the same, so our tactics cannot be the same. Reserving your bloodworms for the hook and using your ground bait as a simple, low-value attractant is the key that will unlock consistent winter success. It's about outsmarting the fish, not just trying to overfeed them. This change will not only save you a significant amount of money on bait, but it will put more and bigger fish on the ice for you. So let's bring it all together. The long-held belief that you need to pack your winter ground bait with bloodworms is, in many, if not most, situations, a complete myth. It overfeeds the fish before they find your hook. It creates massive competition for your own bait. It attracts swarms of small nuisance fish, and it can even spook the very trophy fish you came here to catch. The real aha moment, the turning point in all of this, is realizing that your ground bait's job in the winter isn't to feed the fish. Its job is to create a signpost, a point of interest that leads them directly to your hook. You're building a subtle trap, not opening a restaurant. This simple shift in mindset from feeding to attracting can genuinely be the difference between a frustrating day of staring at a frozen hole and the best winter fishing day of your life. Thank you so much for watching. If this video made you rethink your strategy, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. It really helps the channel out. And of course, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on more tips that go against the grain. Now, I have to know, after hearing all this, are you going to change how you use bloodworms this winter? Or do you still think a loaded ground bait is the only way to go? Let the debate begin in the comments below.